Laura Richardson with Relevate. We are Real Estate Elevated, and this is another episode of I'm Moving to North Carolina, Now What? Today we're bringing you a school consultants episode. This is really important, especially because as you guys know, and as we will discuss on this episode, Wake County is a fickle beast when it comes to understanding school of choice and all the options you have. We're going to talk everything from different types of schools to different calendar options, and also just discuss why Wake County is so unique in comparison to the rest of the United States. So I have the pleasure and privilege of interviewing Libby Taylor, who is the founder of SchoolUp Wake and now SchoolUp Durham. So Libby, tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you decided that this was a good business opportunity here in Wake County.
Sure. So I am Libby Taylor. I am the founder of SchoolUp. We started about 5 years ago when I was talking to some folks about how complicated it is. Whether you live here already and you have an incoming kindergartner, whether you're navigating middle school and high school, or whether you're moving here, we have a lot of choice options here. My background is actually education. So I was a teacher in Durham, I was a teacher in Wake County, and I also did professional development for teachers for about 10 years. So I had a lot of experience, and I felt like I could use that to help families navigate their options. So we created SchoolUp. I thought it was going to be a side hobby. I thought I was going to do that while working for a nonprofit, and it exploded from there. So now I work with tons of local families and families relocating to save them time, help them understand all of their K through 12 school options that we have here, how to find the right school, how to find the right fit for their family, and how to go through the process of applying to schools that aren't their base school.
Fabulous. So guys, as you know, real estate and schools are kind of interconnected because when you buy that new home, it's going to be in a base map or in a certain location in vicinity of what school it's assigned to. Now, granted, we're talking traditional option here, not necessarily your private schools where obviously the transit system, you kind of have to get there on your own. But as far as busing is concerned, base map versus application options. So you have to understand both sides of the table. So it's great that you have a former educator who basically realized that there was a niche that wasn't being met. There was a need in the community that wasn't being met. So you talked a little bit about getting ready for kindergarten, because I've seen both sides of Libby's business, right? Where kindergarten is kind of overwhelming. You're trying to make a choice not only for that first kid or the oldest one in the family, but something that's going to be the best option for all kids. And I'm sure you've seen how just panicked parents get when they're having to make that decision.
Well, when you have school choice, it makes everyone feel like they have to go make a choice.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily true. Base schools are amazing here. But just having the school choice, I think, makes everyone feel like they need to explore what their options are. Same thing when you're moving here. You are trying to figure out which areas might fit you, which calendar type might fit your kids.
Yeah.
Because we have two different calendar types here. We have year-round and we have traditional calendars. And it's really hard to kind of figure all that out and figure out if you need to make a choice or if your neighborhood school is perfect for you.
Well, and I think something, too, that a lot of families don't necessarily consider is the fact that because it's school of choice, you could move into a location and then decide that's not the permanent option, right? Yeah. So how do you kind of navigate those conversations?
Yeah, so that's tricky. I think sometimes you find a dream home or a dream neighborhood, but maybe it's a year-round calendar, and you just don't love that. It's okay, but you don't love it. There are lots of ways to transfer or apply to something else here in Wake County. You can explore Wake County transfers. You can explore magnet schools, charter schools, or private school. And so sometimes we have to work with families and say, hey, we love this house. We love this neighborhood. This market is crazy right now. And so we can figure out which other schools would fit them, which other schools would have the things that they need, and then do that kind of process. Sometimes there's multiple schools that would fit them. And so we can say like, hey, these 5 schools you have the opportunity to apply to. And we can do that, and we can help them through the process so that they can get the dream home and the dream neighborhood and still find the great, perfect school.
Absolutely. So on my side of things, some of the mistakes I necessarily see people making is the fact that once they do create their list, right? So we have some base maps or locations we're looking at. You can actually create searches for homes based off of those maps. And Wake County finally just created a GIS map based base map system. So GIS mapping, guys, is geographical information system, and it covers everything from like easements to flood zones to yada, yada, yada. Now they've got a school base maps set up. So you can literally see where the school zones kind of shift based on elementary, middle, and high school. Because just remember, it's not like an even flow of things, right? They all kind of interconnect. So with that being said, one of the big mistakes I see is creating a search in what we have access to in MLS for the schools, because a lot of times they're not listed correctly in MLS. And so you see that not being populated on Zillow or other websites correctly. So just be really careful when you do that, or if you choose to do that. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you think people have when they're coming here when it comes to Wake County?
So I see a lot of people who think because we have choice that it's open choice.
Yes.
It's not. You do have a base school. Your house does have an address assigned to a base school, elementary, middle, and high school. So it's not like all of these are open. They're not guaranteed. So the easiest thing to do would be like a phase one. Let's find awesome neighborhoods that are in base schools that meet our needs. Phase two is then you could look at magnets or different calendar options that fit your student. You could look at charter schools if there's something more specific you want. So there's not just open choice. It's not that you come in and you pick a school. There are no guarantees. Even if it's a magnet school that's designated for your region, there's no guarantee that you're going to get into it. So you kind of have to know that going in. I think the other misconception is that you can't do all of them, and you can do all of them. I have a lot of clients who look at private, charter, magnet, and traditional schools all at the same time and apply to all of the things. So you can do all of that, and you can move from one to the other. Yes. You could go to a magnet school and choose a private school for high school. You could go to a charter school and come back to your base for high school. You can mix and match all the different things. Sometimes our phase of life changes. Sometimes what our family needs or where we live or our schedule changes, and then our school can change with it. And I think it's a really great opportunity.
So speaking of being able to switch, right? So something, because we deal with a lot of relocations, both in her industry and my own. A lot of folks are coming to Wake County. This is a great place to be, right?
Everybody's coming to Wake County.
Yes, everybody is. I think it's 60 to 80 families or something crazy a day. It's just nuts. But it's amazing. It shows growth. Anytime you see more things being built, it means this is a good place to relocate or invest in. But when it comes to applications, so I often get asked by clients when it comes to magnet schools in particular, I want to go ahead and apply. But they don't live here. So do you mind explaining why that is?
Sure. So actually, it's similar with charter schools. So both magnet schools and charter schools are going to do their applications in the winter the year before you start. So if you are entering kindergarten in 2024, those applications were done in the winter of 23 going into 24, right? So for those rising folks. So those are already closed and seats are filled. You do have the opportunity, I think it's important to know, when you move here, when you buy a house or sign a lease, you enroll in schools and you get 10 days. So you get 10 days to apply to something else. And we can actually, you can go to the Wake County website, you can look up the schools that are still open to transfer, and you can put in a transfer at that time, whether it's a transfer to a magnet or a transfer to a base school. You can do that. Charter schools are probably harder because that's a straight lottery. So for those, you have to wait till the next year. It's really rare to find a school, especially our established, consistent schools. They're going to fill their spots the year ahead of time. And you have to be here and have that address to be in these schools.
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the toughest issues, especially because folks will want to use like their contract to purchase, and Wake County doesn't necessarily think that your intention to buy a house constitutes actually having a deed. Like they are treated totally separate. So I often have to have that conversation that I know you're committed to the assignment. You are ready to move here, but unfortunately the county cannot transfer kids accordingly.
Right.
So I'm sure you've also heard some horror stories that people have shared with you of potentially buying in the county, thinking they were going to a certain school and they weren't. So what are some of the common things that people think and then this ends up happening?
So I think the biggest one is capped schools. This is something that's really different here from almost anywhere else. Some of it is the growth, right? It's an awesome problem to have, but it sometimes is a problem. So we have so much growth that we have overcrowded schools. And sometimes I get the misconception that people think we're not doing enough to follow that growth. They literally cannot build the schools fast enough. They are opening right and left. We are opening multiple schools every year. So Wake County is really doing an amazing job doing their best to keep up with it, but you can only build so many schools so fast. So we do have a lot of capped schools, which means if you move into that zone, even though that's your assigned school, even though that's zoned for your area, you might not be able to get a spot. So a cap is like a caution to anyone who's new that that school might already be overcrowded and full. We also have class size mandates here, which plays a role in this, right? So in our K through 3, it's 18 or less in a classroom. So we can't put more kids in that class or in that building. So they have what's called an overflow. So you'll be sent to an overflow. Sometimes, and in as many cases as they can, it's a really nearby school that's similar in area, similar in neighborhood. Sometimes it's further away, and it could be a school that's different or that is far, is a long bus ride, and is not necessarily a fit. So it's really important that if you see that, you go to Wake County's website, you look up the assigned school for the house you're about to buy, and you check if it's capped and where the overflow is. And it will say right on there now, this school is capped and here's where the overflow is, which is really, really nice. But you want to know what the situation's going to be before you find out that your child's going to be bused, 30 minutes away, possibly. And if it's not a good fit for you.
Yeah, so guys, that's simply just going and double checking that before you put a contract out on a house, double checking the address, which now we have the 2 different systems. You can double check that application schools, overflow schools, making sure you're verifying the information and getting familiarity with both the base school as well as the overflow option, taking tours of both, which I'm sure with tours dealing with relocations, they wonder how they can facilitate that. And I know you've spoken a little bit about the virtual option that some schools have.
Yeah, there are lots. Yeah. So I think during COVID, everyone realized, hey, this is really nice. So those tour videos, information sessions, you can find all of those online.
Yeah.
We also have North Carolina school report cards here.
Yes.
Which I love. It's much better than the Great Schools website. So if you learn anything from today, don't go to great schools. Go look at the North Carolina school report cards. They're accurate, they're up to date, and they're going to show you performance and some details like percentage of experienced teachers, things like that. So you can do that kind of research on a school without even being here. Many schools are actually open to giving tours. Because we have application schools, lots of them are used to giving tours. And you can call the school, you can write the principal and ask for a tour. Elementary schools are probably more likely to do that than bigger middle and high schools. But during the fall, lots of tours are given. So you could just join a tour that's happening. Those schedules are put on their websites and you can go find one. So before you move, you can kind of explore some of the options.
Absolutely. And I know you talked a little bit about grade schools. Niche seems to be another really popular one. And something, guys, to keep in mind is how that data or that grade or score is collected is very different than looking at a TWC, like teacher working conditions survey results or school report card. There's so many. There's a Panorama 360 survey that's the parents answering some questions. Accessing data that actually comes from the population that attends the school or works the school is definitely more reliable than some of these other sites where we're not always sure where they're pulling their data to get those scores. So just make sure that you take everything you see with a grain of salt and that you actually investigate it yourself.
I saw something really interesting recently that I didn't even know. On Niche, they list average SAT scores for high schools.
Interesting.
But it's only the average of the people who input their SAT scores.
So it's not the actual average.
It's not the actual average. So you need to go look up the actual average, which is why I like to go to the state DPI's websites like North Carolina School Report Cards, or they put out average SAT, ACT scores, AP test results, things like that for high school. That will be the current up-to-date comprehensive data, not just what the sites are collecting from people. So I think those are good places to go. And we host all of that on our website. Those resources are all listed on our website so that you can get the up-to-date information.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out SchoolUp Wake's website and just the comprehensive nature of how much stuff is there, I mean, don't go, you can Google it if you want to, but you don't need to go down the rabbit hole searching for all these different things that we're talking about on your own. Go there because everything is already truncated for you. And also, they're going to be the up to date versions of all these different websites because some of this stuff rolls out and changes year to year, or like the new one that we just talked about with the new base maps that didn't exist a year or so ago. So it's good that you can go to one place that has kind of a one-stop shop for all the things.
Yep.
So when folks are touring a school, what suggestions do you give them on things to look for? Because I know this can also vary by school, maybe what is the good thing to look for while you're actually virtually touring or in-person touring?
So that's a great question, and it does a little bit depend on what your family's looking for. So we have some families who want specific programming or need facilities that match that programming. So if there's something you need, whether it's orchestra programs or foreign languages or something like an international baccalaureate program, you want to look specifically for those and ask about that programming. You know, what languages do they offer? What kind of facilities do they have? Other than that, other than those specifics, I think there are some general questions that people tend to look for on tours that can differ state to state. One of them is class size, so you can look at class size. That's different from elementary to middle, but I would definitely ask about that. Experienced teachers. I think teachers, we're both former teachers. I was a mediocre teacher, but experienced teachers who've been there more than 3 to 5 years, I think makes a world of difference because your teacher matters so much. And we have a lot of really experienced, amazing teachers in Wake County. And we have a lot of teaching universities here. So I like to ask about that. What's your percentage of experienced teachers? Technology is another one that is really big, and there's a wide variation. So there are some in other states where there's very little technology in early grade levels. I think here you're going to see a mix as well. So everybody has a preference. Some schools are everything on the computer all day, especially like middle and high school. Some elementary schools are playing with that balance. Like we want to still work on handwriting and have things on paper, but use computers. So figure out what's important to you as a family and ask that. They'll be able to talk to you about that. Homework is really similar. We have a no homework trend happening in Wake County right now. A lot of the elementary schools are going to tell you that they want kids to read every night, but other than that, play, spend family time, do other things. Some people like that a lot, and some people don't. So ask about homework and kind of how that's working at the school, and that applies to all levels as well. I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, typically when I have these conversations with clients, something that I suggest is making sure that work that they're producing is displayed somewhere. Simply because if there's nothing on display, you wonder what's being created. Now, granted, there are some schools that maybe that would be a little bit more applicable if it's doing everything online. It's kind of harder to display a computer screen. But speaking of teacher experience, teacher turnover rate. Not that it's a good or bad thing, but it's something to take note of. If you have a mass exodus that's higher than the state average, there's something going on. If there's an administration change, for example, a lot of teachers will follow the administrator to the new school just because of that good dynamic. Or it's a great opportunity to leave because you don't know what's on the horizon. So it's nice to know that maybe there will be a cultural shift of what you just toured.
And we have a huge teacher shortage right now. Part of that is because we're opening multiple schools. So we have to fill those schools. So something that's interesting with that is that you're seeing teachers be able to move around really easily. And you're seeing Wake County really be able to put some money behind that and make sure that they have great teachers. So I would ask, do you have any open positions right now? And how many do you have? Some of the charter schools and private schools are having a harder time finding staff because they can go wherever they want right now. So you can kind of see how many open positions that they have and whether teachers are leaving.
Absolutely, especially with year-round schools. If you're on, let's say, a 2-person or a 3-person team versus a 4, you're also bringing in dual certifications, which can be a lot tougher to find a teacher to fill that void. So that might be something to kind of take note of. That's a great suggestion. So I know we've got SchoolUp Wake, and you guys decided to start SchoolUp Durham. So talk about that growth and how that opportunity kind of came to be.
Sure. Well, I met an amazing person, was part of it. Emmy is our consultant in Durham. She was raised in Durham. She has an education background. She is passionate about Durham. And so it was the perfect fit. A lot of people who are moving here are looking at all the areas.
Yes.
So we wanted to be able to really serve that. And we wanted to be able to serve families in Durham who also have a lot of choice. Their choice is different than Wake County. We feel like it's really important to kind of specialize in an area because we do tour schools constantly and we do have relationships with them. So I stick to Wake County and she sticks to Durham and a little bit of Chapel Hill. So if you're moving here and you're not sure which area you want to be in yet, we can help with that and kind of talk to you about what makes them all different. We are slowly expanding to Wilmington and maybe someday Charlotte, but we're not there yet. We want to make sure that we are serving the areas we're in now before we do that. But yeah, so we want to kind of expand across North Carolina. There's a lot of choice in a lot of different areas.
Sure. Well, so even just here with the options of staying within one of the bigger counties versus going to some of what I call our secondary counties, what advice do you have for families who are trying to decide? Let's say, for example, they're interested in Fuquay. Fuquay splits into multiple counties.
It does.
So how do you advise them on deciding between those different school systems?
Well, one interesting thing is that private and charter can go across county lines.
Yeah.
So that's important to know. Sometimes getting a more affordable house, I'm going to make things up, in Clayton, but going to a private school if it's in Wake County can really work for you. So that's a perfectly fine way to do things. I think if you know you're going to go to your neighborhood school, then you want to look at the different public systems and do a comparison of those and then decide which side of that line you want to be on. But yeah, we see a lot of movement with Durham, with Franklin County, as far as charter and private schools go. People cross county lines quite a bit. So that's kind of an interesting opportunity here. Sometimes it's easier to, with the housing market the way it is, to find more land or more affordability and then do something like a private or a charter school.
Yeah. So kind of talking a little bit about the real estate aspect of this. I know you work with a lot of people in my industry because not everybody used to teach for over a decade in Wake County, right? And even my familiarity with the school system can only go so far because this is your bread and butter, what you deal with every day.
And I don't have rules like you do.
Exactly.
I can say anything I want.
Yes, where we do have to kind of watch what we say. I cannot say good school, bad school, even though I did work in some of the schools that maybe we talk about, right? So we are bound by fair housing laws and really have to be careful of swaying a family in a certain direction because everything does boil down to bias, right? So it is really good to have somebody who's down on the ground doing this every day, really into the new rules that Wake County also puts out as far as like deadlines are concerned or new schools being open. Libby's going to be the one that's in the know. So there's partnership opportunity between your real estate agent or your realtor and Libby. So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic and maybe the chicken or the egg? Do they talk to you first and then their agent or vice versa?
Either one. Either one is totally fine. Often real estate agents will send people over to us if you have questions that they can't answer. Sometimes we talk to people first and we give them information to take back to their agent. I don't know about housing prices or neighborhoods or anything like that, so that's their expertise. I just know about schools. And we're here to celebrate all the amazing things schools are doing. We're not here to criticize them. So we just help every family with different needs find the schools that fit them. So we can do it either way. We work with lots of agents all over. We're not exclusive to anybody. So we can help families kind of find the neighborhoods that go or match the schools that they need. And then they can take that back to their agents and do their search in that way. And then we're available through the process. So sometimes you find a house and it's a school we didn't talk about. And we're available through that whole process for people.
And I think that's an important thing to mention. So this is not like a one and done consultation and then she wishes you the best of luck and hopes that it works out in the housing market. There is a lot of back and forth with conversation. And we have had that happen numerous times where clients have said, I'm looking at this school here and this school here. And then lo and behold, we throw in one that's like a curveball just because they found the dream home and it was in a completely different location. So it is good to have somebody that you can kind of either text, email, call, and really run through the new option that just populated to make sure that we, again, are buying something in an area you love while also meeting the needs of your family. And that also comes to looking if you have multiple kids, figuring out an option or a location that maybe the kids don't go to the same school. Sometimes that's because of age. Sometimes it's because of needs. I have my older two are literally the antithesis of each other. And so finding a place that fit both their little personalities and academic
ideally,
needs.
they go to the same school.
Ideally that's the goal.
We want to simplify everyone's life, not complicate it.
How often do you have people ask you about that though?
Probably less often than you will think. I think especially like middle and high school. Our schools are big.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of schools that can serve different kids' interests and specialties. Occasionally, there are a lot of families that have them at all the levels. So we end up doing maybe an elementary magnet program, but the base, middle, and high school, we can do all the combinations. Very rarely do I have people who like just their kids go to totally different schools in different directions, but there are people who do that if they need it.
Absolutely. So, guys, moral of the story is you have lots of options and lots of choice, but it's always good to kind of have guidance on where to go and where to start that process. So, if they want to get started, so anybody listening today and they're like, okay, I need to talk to her, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. Probably the easiest is our contact form on our website. That's going to go directly to my email, and we're going to be able to talk to you about the different services we have. So, right now we kind of have 3 different levels. We do webinars that are informational, give you the resources you need to go do your own research. We do boot camps, which is kind of a newer thing for us that we're really excited about. They've been going awesome. Those are like deeper dive than a webinar. It's going to be a week-long thing where we have a session each day, typically 3 sessions, but then we keep up with follow-up. We do a deep dive into schools with you. You can chat with us privately. There's follow-up included. So that's kind of a mid-level service. And then we can hold your hand the whole way if you need it. So typically we would, with a private consultant, sit down for an hour, talk about what you need, really kind of hash out what you're looking for, and then you get follow up with us as part of that process as well. So it's kind of whatever you need. We can save you a lot of time and a lot of research, and we can help you figure out which schools are best for your family, no matter how much you need.
Absolutely. So, guys, her information will actually be in the bottom of this episode in the details section. So please be sure to reach out. We'll have everything there so they can connect with you very easily. And if you have any questions, you can drop those in the comments and we will be sure to get them to Libby and get those answered. But thank you so much for being here. Wealth of knowledge, guys. Her business is outstanding. I know I've had numerous clients that have utilized their services and we're just extremely pleased with the end result. So I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate. We will catch you on the next episode. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like, share, and follow us on Instagram as well as YouTube. We're also on Apple Podcasts. Again, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate.